Today we're going to learn about election day cake. Yummy! Please want to make it?
Welcome or welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rosie Talley, children's author and history lover. This is Past and Pen, where history and storytelling collide. In each episode, I'll bring you a quirky historical fact, a must-read book list, and a writing prompt to help spark your creativity. Are you ready to jump into the past to write a new story? Today, we're talking all about Election Day cake, and this episode is inspired by one of my personal favorite YouTube shows, Tasting History. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's a fantastic channel that brings historical recipes to life. In my show notes, I'll link to the episode that sparked the sweet investigation into election cake, along with a modern twist on the recipe with optional frosting. From the blog Our Heritage of Health. Be sure to check it out. Her version looks delicious, and I'm so grateful to her for letting me use her beautiful photo of the cake in this video. You might be wondering, why am I talking about election cake in April instead of November? Well, back in the late 18th century, Connecticut's election day was held in April, and it wasn't until the 19th century that it moved to November to standardize voting dates. So back then, April was a month of these big community celebrations. Election Day in Connecticut was a big event. Many families traveled across the colony to the capital, not just to vote, but also to visit with family and friends, turning Election Day into a major social event. Since the Puritans didn't celebrate holidays like Christmas or Easter, Election Day became one of their most important social gatherings, complete with a very long sermon and, of course, plenty of food. To mark the occasion, families baked what became known as election cake. Though the tradition dates all the way back to the 1600s, it became especially tied to the elections in the 18th century, eventually earning its official name. During a time when women couldn't vote, baking election cakes allowed them to participate in the democratic process symbolically. Their efforts contributed to the communal and celebratory parts of Election Day, making them a vital, if often overlooked, part of the tradition. And let me tell you, this wasn't your average cake. These were large, fruit-filled loaves packed with spices and raisins, made to be shared with the entire community. Each loaf was about 10 to 12 inches long, and families often baked dozens to make sure everyone had a slice. That's why the recipe was so massive and could take an entire week to prepare. Mothers and daughters often spent hours, sometimes late into the night, tending to massive batches of cake, all mixed by hand. The work was physically demanding, but their dedication helped turn Election Day into a true community celebration. Now that we know how important Election Day cake was to the community, let's take a look at what went into making it. One of the earliest known election cake recipes comes from Amelia Simmons' 1796 cookbook, American Cookery. Here's just a glimpse of what went into it: 30 quarts of flour, 10 pounds of butter, 14 pounds of sugar. To put this into perspective, a typical birthday cake recipe usually has about 2 to 3 cups of flour, depending on the size and style of the cake. Amelia's recipe called for 30 quarts of flour. That's about 120 cups. That's 40 to 60 times the amount of flour in a regular birthday cake. Over time, the tradition of election cake faded. As the country grew and customs shifted, the ways people voted and gathered changed too. New voting practices, along with the spread of different traditions and tastes, eventually pushed this once popular treat into the past. The elaborate, community centered Election Day celebrations gradually became less common as society modernized. But for a time, this cake was much more than a dessert. It symbolized unity, celebration, and the spirit of democracy. It was a reminder that elections, while about politics, were also about coming together as a community to celebrate the freedoms and rights that people fought so hard for. It's time for a little bit of brain food to go with your cake. Check out this week's reading list. A Duck for President by Doreen Cronin. A duck who walks and talks like a duck might just be the next president of the United States. The Election Day Dilemma, an Election Day holiday special. This is from the Boxcar Children's Mystery Series. The Alden children find adventure while searching for a home during Election Day. The Night Before Election Day by Natasha Wing. Wave your flags. It's time to vote in this fun election-themed story from Natasha's best-selling series. A Colonial Quaker Girl, The Diary of Sally Wister by Sarah Wister. The Diary of a 16-year-old Quaker Girl in Revolutionary War-era America. When I Was Young in the Mountains by Cynthia Rylant. A cozy read about a little girl's remembering her childhood in the mountains. It's a peek into simpler times. Let's make up some creativity with today's writing prompt. Imagine you're in 1796 Connecticut preparing for Election Day. Write a diary entry about the chaos and excitement of baking the election cake in your home. Who's involved? What challenges do you face? How does the community come together for this event? Thanks so much for joining me as we explore the past and let our pens do the talking. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button or leave a comment. I love hearing from you. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, leave a review. It helps more curious minds like yours discover the show. You can find the link to the tasting history video that inspired this episode on my website. The link's in the show notes. Plus, if you want to dive deeper, you'll find sources, the reading list, and the writing prompt there too. And hey, if you know someone who would enjoy this, please share it with them. New episodes drop every other Tuesday at 4 p.m., so mark your sundials, set your hourglasses, or just let history repeat itself and tune in. And check out my Patreon. Starting at just $1, you'll unlock fun perks like birthday shoutouts, early access to new episodes, and even a chance to have your voice featured on the show. Each month, you'll receive a new password to use on my website where you can record your answer to the question of the month. This month's question is, if you could travel back in time to any historical period, where would you go and why? What would you bring with you, and who would you want to meet? I can't wait to hear your answers. Stay curious and keep writing your story.